Hello, I found this on Sunday on the car boot sale, and it's the Yamaha PSR-3000. It's a great little keyboard. It's got its own built-in speakers, it's got styles, voices, you can record songs and put it onto USB, and it'll even work like a karaoke machine, and you can have an output for video and have the words playing along as you play the music. However, it has a problem, as with most things that I get off the car boot sale. Now, it does work absolutely fine, apart from the display is black. You can't see anything on the display. So at first I thought the displays had it, it's no good. But if I shine a torch into the display, I don't know if you can see that on the video, but everything is actually there. You can see all the different settings and things, and that all works. But the lighting in the back of the display obviously doesn't work. So I'm going to have to take it apart and fix that. Now then, this came out in 2004, so I'm not sure if the backlighting to this is CCFL, which is cold cathode fluorescent light. And that's like a very tiny fluorescent tube that will sit at the edge of the display, and that lights it from the back. Later LCD monitors all use LEDs basically. They just have a row of these things along the back of it, which is easier to fix. Now, it might not be the tube, it might be the driver for the tube, because normally what happens is the tube loses light over a long period of time. And so I would guess I should have been able to see a little bit in there, but I can't see anything. So maybe there's something else stopping the tube from actually working. If I can't get it working, I will just try and make a row of LEDs and try and backlight it like that. But it's worth fixing, especially for the amount I paid for it. So I'm going to open it up and get inside and try and figure out why that display is not working. So turn it off and find my screwdriver. Okay. Blimey, that back part is actually as heavy as the rest of the keyboard. Now, this is interesting. There's actually a section here to put batteries in, but there's no connectors for batteries. That's a shame. Maybe they're just using the keyboard from another version of the PSRs that did run on batteries. There wouldn't be any point in remaking this if they've got lots of these keyboards. So yeah, I don't think this would last very long on batteries, not with the display and all the speakers and the amplifier and everything. Anyhow, the problem is I need to get underneath all this lot, so all this lot has got to be moved. But before I do that, this board here is the CFL board. So I'm going to have a look around here first and do a bit of probing, just to make sure that is actually working. So one way of seeing if this is kind of working without sticking multimeters and things on these wires, because these inverters run at very high frequencies and some of them are quite high voltages, you can get a shock off this. It's not very nice. But what you can do is, if you just get a little diode and put it on an oscilloscope, any oscilloscope will do really, like so. Now then, if you look on the scope, I've got it set at 10 volts per division. Now this becomes almost like a little signal sniffer, and as I bring it down towards the cables, look at that. No contact required, so you're not going to blow your scope up just by testing like that. And that sort of says to me, yeah, that is the kind of signal that these things give out to light those CCFL tubes. So that's just yeah, it's just a sort of Heath Robinson way of checking whether these things are actually running. And you see, you can follow the wire and get the signal off it. So I'd say the inverter is working fine. So the problem is obviously on the actual tube, because I know it's a tube now because of this circuit. So yeah, I just thought I'd share that little idea with you. It's quite good, that, isn't it? Now, before you go too far doing a job like this, it's always a good idea to take some pictures on your phone or whatever, so you know where all the connectors are. A lot of processors and things in there. This is all memory. It looks like there's space here to add more memory. I know there was a PSR-1500 and a PSR-3000 in this sort of series, so I'd have thought this would have had the more memory and the 1500 would have had less, but I don't know exactly how that works. More memory space here as well for adding more memory chips. But yeah, very interesting, nice board. And this whole processor can, come on, fold that over nice and gently out of the way, like so. Oh, great. Well, this is the display, and it's still, I still can't move it because these are in the way, so I've got to literally take these boards out here as well. No wonder they were expensive. Quite expensive keyboards these were in their time, but it looks like there's a lot of manual work of putting all these screws in and assembling it bit by bit. It's not your typical one board does all type of synthesizer. It's all these extras and things. Now, I've moved these aside, obviously, to try and get to the screen. This is the screen here. But even looking at the screen, I can see that that is screwed to a board, and then the rest of the board is down here. So I'm wondering, do I have to take all the keyboard out as well to get to this? Hopefully not. If I can't fix the CFL tube, which, you know, if the tube has actually died, that's the end of it. You can't sort of fix it. You have to replace it. What I might do instead is just try and get a row of LEDs to do the same job. Right, see, this is going to move. I've moved what seems like the 4 screws that hold that in place. Right, the screen is moving, and I think oh, how do I get it out? I'm pulling at another ribbon cable here. God, I was so close. So what's that on? Okay. The other problem is remembering where everything goes. Just here, the white wire and the pink wire, that's where the little CFL tube is, along there. So I think if I unscrew these, I should be able to lift that metal part and get to that tube and find out what went wrong with it. Maybe I should have just stuck to using a torch. Would have been easier. Well, no, because that's not repaired it then, has it? So I've got to prise these little bits up and try and pop this through to get to that piece. So you don't want to put too much force on these things. You just need to kind of unclip these little pieces just by getting the screwdriver in there and just lifting that metal away slightly. There you go, that's moved it. Put it down like that. Then remove it. You've got to be so gentle with these, you can disturb the tiny ribbon connections on the edges there. Ah, sticky tape, right. Come on. There we go. Try and lift this through. Right, there you go, there's your CCFL. Like I say, it's just a miniature fluorescent tube, but it's started to go black at one end here. That's the, I'm not sure if they use mercury vapor in these, and that sort of sputters in the end there. Yeah, the connections are on. Like I say, I'm going to try and make a row of LEDs that will sit inside there and try and backlight this thing. I've thought about putting LEDs down the side of this instead of trying to source another one of these CCFLs. Now I've got lots of these sort of strips that I've taken out of monitors and televisions and things. You know, if I strip them down, I always take these pieces out, these sort of things, and these edge light the LCD in a screen. It's too complicated to do a fix like this, because I'm trying to do a fix so that you can do the fix as well at home if you need to. So I've moved on to another idea, and the other idea is you can buy these rolls of LEDs on a strip and use it for lighting. This one's no good because this is red, green, blue all the way along there. However, I do have some white ones, and you can get these pretty cheaply. Now, there's many different types of white ones that you can buy. They have nice tiny LEDs on it, which would be nice because they're nice and thin. So that's where the LEDs need to sit, in there. But by the time you fold this over, this sort of collapses and faces downwards. So I need to get as thin as possible. So what I did, I found this strip here. It's ever so slightly thinner, not enough, but look how many LEDs per inch is on that one to this one. If I put this one in, I'm still only going to get 6 LEDs in it. But if I can get this one in, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I can get 12 LEDs in it, so it's going to be brighter, of course. But how do I get that to sit in there and actually work? Well, a little bit of experimentation. So if I cut off 12, I don't want this bit with the solder on because that's going to make it lumpy. So I'm going to cut it here. And you see on these LEDs, every 3 LEDs you can cut it where those copper pads are. So that makes it 12 volts with the resistor, another 12 volts with the resistor, so on and so forth. So you just put 12 volts in and this will work. Thinking about where I'm going to get the 12 volts from on the actual keyboard, I'll get to that when I get to it, type of thing. Anyhow, before I cut another bit of that, what I want to do is experiment and see just how much I can trim this down to fit in there to stop it folding over. So 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 12 LEDs. Let me just check that length. Yep, that'll go in there, 12 LEDs. You can't cut 11 or 10, it's got to be in multiples of 3s. So I want to put that strip inside there. And it goes in, but of course it doesn't fold. It's too lumpy and it folds the LEDs over again, so we've still got the same problem. But how much can I trim off the edge of that and get away with it? Well, let's have a look. You can't just trim the edge off because there's copper strips running underneath there. It's like a little bit of a circuit diagram underneath the plastic. So if you go too far, you're going to be disconnecting things. So let me see what's the best way of trying to get this to sit inside there. I'm just going to take a little slither off the edge here. This is purely experimental. It might not even work because I don't know what's going off underneath this plastic strip. Right, that thins it down a little bit. Is it still going to work there? Now I don't know what side positive is because I've just chopped them off. I think it's that way around. That's good. They're all still working. Right. Now then. What's that going to look like when I get it in there? Still a little bit chunky. It's still sticking up a bit on the end there. It can fold over a little bit, I guess. Let me put that on there and see if I can get the actual top cover back on. That way around. Yeah, you see it's not quite going down. Just clip that in there. Clip that in there. Oh, I don't know. that fits. Right, I'm going to put 2 wires on that and see what it looks like. So let me get those in there. See if I can fold it down and dress it, as they say. Get those wires through there. Oh, those wires are a bit close together. We might be okay. I might need to put a bit of tape over that actually, because I don't know if this metalwork is going to be grounded or something. I don't want it to affect it. So and put a bit of sticky tape over that as well, just to protect it, just in case. That should, in theory, stop that wire touching the metal case. Right. And the problem is, of course, I can't actually test it properly until the whole thing's reassembled. Right, okay. I think that might have done the job. It looks reasonably... yeah, reasonably lit. It might work. Let's see if it works. Now then, actually, I think this is the most difficult part. To try and squeeze all that back together again and not forget any of these multiple connections that are going everywhere. Now, on the board, I found plenty of places where there's 12 volts and where there's 5 volts. Obviously 5 volts won't do this, and 12 volts is going to make it far too bright. So I need to make it down to 9 or 10 volts. So what I've got to do is make something with one of these. Can you focus? Yes, a 7809. That's a 9 volt regulator. The last 2 digits on the end of these is the voltage. So a 7805 is a 5 volt regulator, a 7812 is a 12 volt regulator, and if that 78 is 79, then it's a minus voltage regulator, a negative voltage regulator if you wish. So I'm going to make a tiny little circuit and hopefully attach this to the 12 volts that's inside the actual keyboard and get 9 volts to do this. I don't really want to just put a big resistor on it and sort of lower its voltage down like that. That's not really the correct way of doing these things. So a 7809 voltage regulator. So if I just draw a little picture for you, and you've got 3 pins or 3 legs that comes out of the bottom. Now the first pin, looking at it this way on, that's the input. So I can send in 12 volts positive there. And the negative, that has to go to the center pin. And then the output is going to be 9 volts positive. As simple as that. And there's the negative. However, to make it nice and smooth, it would be a good idea to put a couple of capacitors, one there and one there. So it's a simple little circuit. So I need one of those, and I need a couple of capacitors. The capacitors have to be rated higher than the voltage that it's going to handle, of course. So if 12 volts is going in, I need a 25 volt capacitor or something. Oh, actually these will do for both sides. 47 microfarads, 25 volts. Throw that back, and one of these either side will kind of keep it nice and smooth, I hope. Not very big capacitors, are they? They'll do the job. Right, so I've got to make this little tiny circuit up here, and then I'm going to test it by putting in 12 volts from the power supply and sticking this on the other side and seeing how bright this is. It may not be bright enough. So there's my little bodge, if you want to call it that. I put the 2 capacitors there, and there's just 3 strips of a strip board, and I've left this sort of dangling so I've got somewhere to bolt it down. I can bolt it down to a bit of the metal, because this is the ground anyway, and there's lots of ground points that are metal inside the keyboard, so I can just screw that down without worrying too much, and it'll double up as a heatsink. You must remember the capacitors, if they're electrolytic, you've got to have the negative side to the center pin. So what I've got here, I've got the blue wire coming from the power supply, and that's set for 12 volts. I've got the white as the negative and the green as the output. So hopefully I'm going to get 9 volts out of that green one. So I'll just wire this up, and I haven't checked this before. So it's either going to work or it isn't going to work, or it's going to be too dull. So that's my negative, the white wire, and the green wire is my output. So let's have a look. Go on, stay straight, that's it. Right, 12 volts. Ha 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 ha. That's beautiful. Just about what I want. I'm just going to check the actual voltage anyway. Should be 9 volts, or 9.1 or 8.9 or something like that. 8.97, yeah, 9 volts. That's good enough. So there you go, I've screwed the end of the regulator into here, and this has got lots of ground connections on it, so that should be okay. The output and ground for the LEDs are coming off here and going behind the display. And so now this bit, I've got to connect to plus 12 volts. Make sure the power is unplugged out of this thing. And there's a 12 volt regulator just hiding there. And that little jumper cable is 12 volts output. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to directly solder that to that little jumper cable that is just there. And then I'll flip it over, power it up, and see what happens. There you go, nice and solid. Now the big test, I'm going to flip it over and power it up. Aha! Just change the contrast of that. There we go, look at that. I think that's a good one. Yep, easily readable, perfectly good, and all the contrast works and everything, so brilliant. Job's a good one. I'm kind of hoping that little board sticking out there isn't going to foul on anything here. Right, don't forget to plug in the speakers. Right, there you go, it's all back together, and the screen does look rather nice on it. I thought it would be really bright down one side and sort of a bit dull the other side, but that's quite nicely sort of, it's nice even light. So yeah, if you've got a problem with these CCFLs, pull them out and just put LEDs in. They're a lot cheaper, and yeah, that should last for years now. I do hate to see keyboards and things being thrown away because of just a little fault. I like to try and save as many as I can. I've got far too many around the house already, but it's just nice to save another one from death. Anyhow, I think it all works. I don't know what I'm doing with this machine, by the way. There's accompaniment. It's got quite a nice sound system. But I'm not going to sort of play out or anything. I'm just going to let the demo play itself out because copyrights and things. I can't play anybody else's music, but I can play the demo. Anyhow, if you found that useful, and I hope it will be useful to somebody out there, please give us a thumbs up and keep watching because there's more repair videos on the way. And all the best. Thanks very much for watching. Goodbye.